So you signed the. So yeah, you signed that. That's the time.
Let me ask you a question.
Call to order the New Kent County Board of Supervisors July 11th, 2022 meeting to order. Mr. Tiller, will you lead us in the prayer and pledge, please?
Yes, sir. Let's pray. Most kind and gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this gorgeous day in New Kent County. We thank you for all the people that are here today, that they made it here safely, and see that they make it home safely tonight. Be with us now as we conduct this meeting and see that we do it in a manner that is most pleasing to you. For these things we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Tiller. Ms. Stanger, will you call the roll?
Mr. Evelyn?
Here.
Mr. Tiller?
Here.
Ms. Page? Here. Mr. Steers?
Here.
Mr. Lockwood?
Here.
Good evening. Welcome, everyone. A special welcome to our retired supervisor, Mr. Davis, and his lovely wife. That's a little different seeing you sitting on that end of the end of the building. Yeah. But anyway, a pretty busy agenda tonight, so we'll get on to it. First item is the consent agenda. Are there any changes, corrections, concerns? Ms. Page?
Doesn't want me to talk? Okay. Mr. Chair? I know, right? Mr. Chair, I move that the consent agenda be recorded as presented to this board.
Thank you, Ms. Page. Any comments? Clerk, can you poll the members, please?
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Ms. Page? Aye. Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. Next is the citizens' comment period. Anyone signed up? Thank you. All right, we have 3 people signed up this evening. Ms. Ellen Davis. I think you know the format.
Thank you. Ellen Davis. I say my address?
Yeah.
7610 Davis Pond Road, Eltham, Virginia, 23181. As all of you are aware, June 30th was my last day to represent New Kent County on the RCC Local Community Board, the last 3.5 years which I have served as chair. I wanted to personally come and thank you all for granting me that honor and that privilege to represent not only you, but the county on the board. I think y'all know that how I feel about the community college system and what it presents to folks, especially folks in rural communities, and especially when we look at this skyrocketing cost of 4-year colleges and how many of our kids, especially in New Kent, are getting those dual enrollment degrees. I want to thank you for your past, present, and I sincerely hope future support of the college. One of the things of which I am most proud is that during that 8 years, I saw an evolution to really keep the administration going out into the counties that RCC serves and saying to employers, what skill set do we need to teach the folks that are going to apply to you for jobs? And we've seen those partnerships. I'm hoping that with this new the new place that's coming in New Kent, whose name just escaped me? AutoZone, thank you. That I know that we will be RCC will be reaching out to those folks saying, what do you need us to teach people? And I think that's such an important thing, especially for a rural county. And Ms. Page and Mr. Lockwood, especially in y'all's districts, where we're drawing more and more kids every year to RCC. There are only 2 counties in the RCC service area that are gaining population and graduating more high school seniors, New Kent and Gloucester. So the impact that this community college has on our folks, I think, is insurmountable. Again, I want to thank you for allowing me to have this privilege. I sincerely hope I made y'all proud. Thank you.
You did. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, may I say something? Ms. Davis, I have to tell you that at our groundbreaking, I absolutely introduced their representative from AutoZone to President Kennedy. And so they exchanged contact information, and she was very much interested in Rappahannock Community College. Thank you. And thank you for your service, ma'am.
Mr. Tiller?
Yes, I just, one question. Is Ray planning on stepping into your shoes and for this? No. Ron said no.
No.
She wears a size 8.
Also, I'd like to thank Ms. Davis for, all the help you've done with not only the college, but with New Kent students enrolling in. And I think we're very fortunate to have RCC here in New Kent. And I mean, that's, Ray Davis is on this board when we all voted to bring RCC in here. And I think that's one of the smartest votes we all made. And we appreciate all your efforts. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Lockwood?
Ms. Davis, I too would like to thank you for your commitment to RCC, but not just to RCC, but to New Kent in general. You've been a wonderful asset to this community in so many different ways, and the pleasure of working with you at Proclaiming Grace Outreach as well. I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Mr. Davis?
Okay. Ray Davis, 7610 Davis Farm Road. I'm Ellen's roommate. Only thing I've seen that's changed in the last couple of years, y'all put the county administrator and an attorney down in the peanut gallery. I guess that was because of COVID. Yeah, okay. All right. I just wanted to come and say that thank you for people in this county, because I know what it takes to do what you do. It takes a lot of your time. It takes a lot of your effort. And if you're like me, I used to go home and stay awake for 3 or 4 hours seeing what I did wrong, but or what the others did wrong. So anyway, Ron, and you're right. If y'all ever need to know how to vote, just give me a call. So thank you all, and something you can, life doesn't end when you leave those seats up there. So tonight I can take my bride out for a dinner on a Monday night. So good luck. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Daniel Stewart?
Daniel Stewart, 8139 Airport Road, Clinton, Virginia, 23141. I spoke before on this. I'm going to, I guess, speak until, I don't know. But subdivisions, please reconsider when you guys approve subdivisions. I know we're getting a new elementary school in Clinton, but what about the middle school, then the high school in the future for all that? Because population's growing, but the infrastructure, do we have the infrastructure to facilitate all that? I'm talking across the board. The roads, some of these roads aren't wide enough for what we got, or barely wide enough. And then Olivet Church Road, that dump, that road is crazy. If you guys go down it, you know it. And y'all approved to get 7 more houses built down there last time, like last month or month before. So please consider that. And then the all the other ones, but wildlife as well. You're taking their homes away. Not you in general, well, in a way you are, but they have a place to live, and you take that away from them. So where are they going to go? Start getting into people's houses or garages and in the roads, and more accidents and everything else. So just take that in consideration when you approve these subdivisions. That, infrastructure, but we need businesses, big businesses, to come here. And if you take all that land up for houses, where are they going to go ahead and build their businesses? Yes, AutoZone, that's great, but we need other businesses as well. So just please take that in consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, the Residency Administrator's Report.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members, and Mr. Hathaway. I'm Jeff Allgood. I'm the representative tonight for VDOT. Just want to go over a few things we've been doing in the month of June. We did some pothole patching. We did some asphalt repair on 705 Richardson Road. We did it on 601 Tabernacle. 705, we did some surface treatment. We had received 48 work requests. We completed 36. We had 4 call-outs in the month of June. We're on our second primary mow right now, where we're about 90% complete. We just finished our first secondary mowing. We just finished that. Hopefully I said secondary primary cut, if I misspoke on that. The Route 60 paving is 99% complete. That's just going through quality control right now. And 649, the patching has started on Rock Hawk Road. They should start paving this week if the patching goes okay and the weather permitting. Route 600, Holly Fork Road, the concrete is still curing on that project. We'll know more once the concrete cures to when we're going to reopen that. Mr. Lockwood, we did put a task order out for those trees that you mentioned. So that's all I have. If you got any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Allgood. Mr. Steers?
Yes, Mr. Allgood. This board is sick and tired of me for the last 5 years begging to repave Rockahawk Road, and I think the VDOT Angels have come in to roost today, and we appreciate it. Are you guys going to be at the Transportation Safety Commission meeting on Wednesday?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'll save my other remarks for then, if that's okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Tiller?
Yes. And you mentioned the paving part of Route 60, the westbound side. Are they going to come back? I've noticed there's several entrances into Five Lakes and also into Patriots Landing. And this may sound petty, but with the asphalt, as much as they brought it up into the streets, into the neighborhoods, are they going to go back and put like a stop bar there before? Because I watched a person in front of me the other morning when I was going out, and they actually pulled way out closer to that right-hand lane than they probably should have. I mean, it's a stop sign there, and they did stop, thank goodness.
Right.
But if I remember correctly, there were stop bars at all those intersections prior. Are they going to come back and put
If they were stop bars there before, they'll put them back. So they're, like I said, they're in 99% completion right now. So
Okay.
they're coming out and making sure everything is done, and that's probably on the schedule to be done.
Okay.
Definitely if they were already there before.
It's crazy. I mean, I've lived in that neighborhood for 37 years, and it seems to me with all the asphalt that's there now, so everything is all the same color. Before, you had pavement stopping at the gravel, the gravel road right there, and they actually cut that back further this time, which was good because that gravel part of the road there at the end of Longview especially was really in bad shape. So
I'll follow up with the construction manager, and we'll get back to you.
And I had a complaint, and I spoke with the sheriff last week, and the section of Patriots Landing, as this woman called it, from the big houses to the smaller houses, which I think is Kimball Road.
Okay.
It's, and it connects to South, what was it, Sheriff? Yeah, South Franklin Way.
Okay.
Because a lot of people in there park on both sides of the road, so it makes it really narrow. And this lady was concerned about a lot of cars speed through there, especially on that connecting road on Kimball. Is there any way we could get some signs for about children playing to help slow? And I know the sheriff had said that they would run radar, they'd put up their mobile sign warning people about that, the speed. If we could put some kind of signage in there about children playing,
Okay. I'll get with Mr. Frazier and we'll follow back up with you on that.
All right, one more thing, and I promise I'll stop. Patriots Landing, they have had permission for golf cart usage in their neighborhood for, I think, 3 years now. And somebody questioned me a couple weeks ago about that, if it included the Cumberland section, which we found out the Cumberland section of Patriots Landing, which is behind Duncan, back there where the fitness center is, that was all part of the original PUD, so that was included. And there's a gentleman there that said he'd be more than happy to put up a couple signs letting people know that golf carts were in use back through there. He just didn't know where he could put them. Would that be something? And he said, if I have to call Miss Utility, I'll get the utilities marked. Just ask VDOT where I can put the signs, if they need, how far off the road, in the right of way, or whatever.
Is that something, do you have his information, or you want Mr. Frazier to reach out to you for that information?
He can reach out to me and I can pass it along. That's fine.
Okay.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank
Yes,
you.
sir. All right.
That's it. Told you.
Mr. Lockwood?
Yes, Mr. Allgood. I'm just curious, you mentioned the dam where they're doing the concrete. I was also told they're going to resurface that road once they finish the dam. Is that still on the schedule to do?
That's what Mr. Wynn indicated. Once they finish the project, they would pave that right in that area.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And then you sent me an email on the 23rd about the 601 ceiling where they've done the shoulder work on Tabernacle, that they're going to come back in a couple of weeks and seal that up. Is that still on the agenda? So
Yes, where Mr. Terry's done the asphalt work.
Yep.
Yes, they're going to come back and reseal that with tar and rock.
Great. And I just want to thank Mr. Terry and your team for the work that you guys have done in Barhamsville with the drainage issues there. We had some crazy rain a couple of weeks ago, and everything flooded like crazy, like you would expect with that kind of a downpour. But within an hour, you could barely tell it rained. Everything drained off really well. It was really well done. So I just want to thank you, gentlemen, for that work.
All right, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ms. Page?
Good evening. He was on vacation, so I did the same thing on Saturday, but I did ride down there, and just like Mr. Lockwood expressed, it just ran right off. I talked to the homeowner. He is so appreciative of finally getting that done. I wanted to know, on Stage Road, between 33 and 249. I wanted to know if you could send me, or if you could help me with the procedure to do restriction of trucks. They come through there when I-64 is backed up. And so you've been on Stage Road,
Yep.
You know how narrow it is. But those trucks are there, and on Stage Road, there are certain places where they have dips. So the trucks are dipping, and you're meeting them. And the other thing is, when they get to 249, then they're pulling out. Well, then you got traffic coming down both fields. So I wanted to know if we could do anything with a truck restriction on Stage Road. And second, George W. Watkins Road. At the end of Watkins Road, in front of Watkins School, it is always water in the lane there. It never drains. I mean, if we get a dry spout, then it does. But like when you go back to Richmond, it's water there now. And I don't know, it's a drainage issue. And on the other side, if you enter in 249, on your right-hand side, you see the water. If you're coming down Watkins Road on the right-hand side,
Okay.
then right in that area, it was a pothole. And they worked to fix the pothole, but with the traffic and everything on that road, it's still that dip of that pothole there. And then in the 1, 2, 3, in the third house on the same side, their driveway, where their driveway meets Watkins Road. They have a huge pothole there that is actually on Watkins Road. And so I have those. And then at the intersection of Eltham and New Kent Highway, they had an accident there. The sign was knocked down. It has never been put back up. I don't know if there's VDOT or the county that takes care of that.
If it's the name of the road, it's the county.
Okay.
If it's a route, it's ours.
Yeah, it's been just laying there in the grass, so we need to put that back up, please. And that's all I have. Just thank you all for all that you do.
Okay, and I think we've got all that information. If I have any questions,
And now
I'll call
send
you.
you an email.
Okay,
No
yeah.
worries. I got you.
And I believe Mr. Hathaway is familiar with the process of truck restriction. I don't know if you want to send that or Mr. Wynn.
Yes, we're working on a resolution now for VDOT to review. We understand that we have to conduct a public hearing. And then if that resolution is approved, then it goes to the Commonwealth Transportation Board for adoption.
Thank you, sir. I'm sorry, man.
I'm sorry, I had one more question too. Is there a process to go through, and this might be for Mr. Hathaway as well, but for contacting the mapping companies, Google, Apple, and all that stuff for the way they route vehicles? I had somebody call me the other day that said that trucks are being routed down Plum Point Road to go to West Point. And he said it's happened several times that, there's no way you're getting there from there. So I'm just wondering, is there a way to contact these? I don't know, maybe through VDOT, if you guys have something that, no.
I can look into it and get back
Okay.
to you on it and see.
Yeah, because
I
I've
mean,
had some
you never
other
know.
issues with mapping to the wrong location that
I mean,
would
I
be
see.
nice to be able to just send someone an email, but
I see another county puts up a sign saying
Don't go
follow
this way."
GPS. So,
Right there, the Elko Road.
yeah,
Yeah.
so.
All right. I think everybody else had plenty for you, but I'd just like to thank you all, the Sheriff's Department and the Fire Department. We had a pretty bad fire there on Old Church Road 3 or 4 weeks ago, so thanks everybody for coming out there and controlling traffic and making sure everybody was safe.
All right,
That's all I
appreciate
have.
it. All right, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have a small business close-up. Mr. Smolin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Matt Smolnick, your Director of Economic Development. So going to switch things up a little bit tonight, not specifically a small business, but there's a business referral network coming out of Richmond called 212. Now they're looking to expand routes and set up shop here in New Kent County. Tim MacArthur at Royal New Kent has been so gracious to host this group, which I've been a part of for the last several weeks. And we were sitting around last Thursday. Well, Matt, how can you help get the word out? I said, what are you doing Monday night at 6 o'clock? I said, I've got a good idea for y'all. So with me, New Kent resident Sharon Schaefer from District 4, Mr. Steers. She works for Spot On, so she maybe talk a little bit about her business if she likes, but really to talk about 212 and help get the word out here to help promote the small businesses in New Kent County. So it's all yours, Sharon.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sharon Schaefer, and I guess I give my address. Is that
No,
not
you
a
don't have
thing?
to do that. You're,
Okay.
yeah.
I'm with Spot On, and I'm a member of the 212 networking group. As Matt mentioned, it's out of Richmond, and we're trying to put roots here in New Kent and work with some of the smaller and medium-sized businesses. It's been the perfect storm for those that niche of businesses the past few years. Sales have pretty much been flat, but costs continue to rise. And New Kent's such a unique area. You really, our goal is to understand our markets and to tailor our solutions to those markets rather than just offer a cookie cutter approach. New Kent's not like anything else. So we're looking to add more businesses that complement some of our other solutions, and Tim MacArthur is generous to host us at Royal New Kent every Thursday, and we welcome any kind of referrals you guys can send our way, and any other businesses that want to join us so that we can work together and help to build this network that's based on trust and to better serve the New Kent area needs.
All right, thank you. Anybody have any questions or comments?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. How many businesses are you typically working with now? I mean,
We're just getting started. So right now we have about 8 different companies that come together on Thursdays.
okay.
So, we try not to overlap industries, but, that's not an issue right now. We're really trying to get the interest out there. We've only had a handful of meetings and, everybody's dedicated to New Kent and, just understanding the needs here. And I live in Berkshire, so I love the area and I certainly want to see the businesses do well.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, we can't do the public hearings now. I think we have a closed session, a couple items. Mr. Tiller,
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
cut your mic on.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, I move to go into closed session pursuant to section 2.2-3711A.5 of the Code of Virginia for discussion concerning a prospective business where no previous announcement has been made of the business interest in locating its facilities in the county. And I move to go into closed section pursuant to section 2.2-3711A.3 of the Code of Virginia for discussion regarding the acquisition of real property for the Department of Parks and Recreation, where a discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position and negotiating strategy of the county.
Thank you, Mr. Tiller. Ms. Stanger, will you poll the members?
Ms. Page?
Aye.
Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. Right. We're going to closed session. We'll be back out momentarily. call the meeting back to order. Entertain a motion to come back into open session.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Tiller. Stanger, will you call the roll?
Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Ms. Page? Aye. Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. Certification?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The board would need to take a certification by roll call vote that only the matters identified in the motion to convene in closed session and lawfully permitted to be discussed under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act were heard, discussed, or considered. Ms. Stanger, would you please call the roll so the members can so certify? Thank you.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Ms. Page? Aye. Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. Mr. Lockwood, do you have a motion?
I do, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I move to authorize the county administrator to execute the proposed purchase and sale agreement with the Presbytery of Eastern Virginia Incorporated for the purchase of 274 acres in New Kent County known as the McKimmey Woods Campground for a purchase price of $1 million. I further move to appropriate funding from the Colonial Downs Restricted Capital line item for the purchase of the McKimmey Woods property in an amount equal to the purchase price and closing settlement costs.
Thank you, Mr. Lockwood. Is there any discussion on his motion? If none, poll members, please.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Ms. Page? Aye. Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. All right. It's after 7 o'clock, so we can start our public hearings. First public hearing tonight is Ordinance O-11-22, proposed amendment to the provisions for open space or cluster subdivisions and minimum lot size for the agriculture A1 zoning district. Mr. Hathaway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Before you, you have Ordinance O-11-22 that amends Section 91-127 of the Subdivision Ordinance and Chapter 98, Article 7 of the Zoning Ordinance as it relates to the minimum lot size for the A1 agricultural zoning classification. First, I'll briefly start with why. At the January work session, staff was directed to look at our subdivision ordinances and bring back a recommendation to you of provisions that could be enacted that would better control the growth that was occurring in the county, which was of concern. Staff brought back a proposed ordinance at the March regular meeting, and that ordinance was forwarded to the Planning Commission for public comment and review at the March 14th regular meeting. The Planning Commission has reviewed the ordinance at their June 21st meeting and voted 6-3-1 to forward a favorable recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. What the ordinance does is significantly amends our current cluster subdivision provisions. And real briefly, currently to do a cluster subdivision, you have to have 70 acres. You have to back out your RPA, your resource protection area. The acreage that is left can be broken up into one lot per 1.5 acres. That's how you determine your density calculation. And half of that 70 acres has to be placed into a permanent conservation easement. The change in what's being proposed in this document, the most significant change is the density calculation. Instead of the 1 lot per 1.5 acres, staff is now proposing 1 lot per 10 acres. The state code requires New Kent County to have a cluster, open space cluster provision. It requires us to have that because we have a population growth rate of more than 10% since the last census. All localities across the Commonwealth that meet that standard is required to have an open space cluster subdivision provision. The state code also states that it has to be available in at least 40% of the land area in the county. The state code also states that the density calculation is based on the minimum lot size of the zoning district in which you're subdividing in. The proposed ordinance would only allow the cluster in the agricultural zoning district, and that is the primary reason of the adjustment, the amendment to the minimum lot size, is to impact the density calculation for the cluster subdivision. A few more changes that are being proposed to the way that we operate today. We are currently proposing a maximum lot size of 2 acres. Currently, there is no maximum lot size. This ordinance also proposes that 80% of the property be set aside in a permanent conservation easement. Currently, the standard is 50%. The whole purpose of the state ordinance requiring us to have these provisions is to preserve open space in the county. So we feel that what's being proposed is more in line with the intent of the state by setting the 80% standard. That is the majority of what has been changed. There are some provisions in here as it relates to grandfathering and boundary line adjustments. I say grandfathering, but non-conforming uses as far as boundary line adjustments. I would also like to state by changing the minimum lot size of the A1 district to 10 acres as opposed to 1.5 acres, the only subdivision that this impacts is the cluster subdivision. It does not impact the family subdivision. It does not impact the parent tract subdivision. It does not impact the large lot subdivisions. Those are the only subdivisions that are permitted in A1. So the new proposed minimum lot size would only impact the cluster subdivision. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hathaway. Any questions from Mr. Hathaway? Ms. Page?
The red line in this, is that the county red line or is that the planning commission red line?
The planning commission forwarded a recommendation to you with no changes from what staff drafted. So essentially it's the planning commission, but it's also staff's recommendation as well.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr.
Mr. Hathaway, so this would still allow people to take their land if they wanted to develop it and subdivide it. They would have to go through a rezoning otherwise to go to a normal subdivision as opposed to a cluster subdivision. So we're not really restricting anybody's ability to develop their property. We're just putting provisions that would require county input as opposed to by right. Is that kind of part of what we're doing here?
That's exactly what we're doing here. I mean, I recognize this will end the cluster subdivision the way that it has been performed, and that this will force people to go the rezoning route as opposed to the by right cluster subdivision route. Now, I've heard some arguments that this is going to drive up the cost of development in the county. And that's an argument that I do not agree with. And the main reason is, per our cluster subdivision requirements right now, we require you to build a state road. We require you to bring utilities to the property, everything that we would require in a rezoning subdivision. Essentially, you have the opportunity or could have the opportunity, depending on the property, to get more lots through a rezoning than what's permitted through a cluster. So I think every case is going to be different, but I wouldn't make a blanket statement that this is just going to drive up the price for all housing in the county.
And one of the other aspects of this too is that with a cluster subdivision, there's no proffers, there's there's really nothing more than real estate tax that's brought back to the county. So there's no offsets for education and fire and rescue and all that stuff that comes into the county as well. Is that correct?
That is correct. There is no opportunities for the county to receive proffers, and also there is also no control over where growth occurs. We all know that we have a comprehensive plan. That comprehensive plan has a future land use strategy, a future land use plan as part of that document, and we have no control currently to ensure that we're growing in a manner that's consistent with our future land use plan. This would do it by encouraging development to come before you for approval.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hathaway, I know I've said this numerous times, but I've been on board 15 years, and pretty much we've not had a rezoning in 15 years, and what's coming forward is cluster subdivisions because they are easy. And I spoke with the Home Builders Association and some other builders. They think we probably are being a little drastic, which I can see where they're coming from. But for us to get a handle on a comprehensive plan and get a handle on the growth in the county, I think this is something we really need to look at and consider. With that, we've had numerous cluster subdivisions pop up in the last 8 to 10 years. Wouldn't you say that the majority of those in our comp plan were designated as rural lands?
Yes, I would. Yes.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? All right. Well, I'll open the public hearing. Bring the sign-up sheet, please. Have a few people signed up this evening. I would ask that you come up, state your name and address for the record, and you will be given 3 minutes to speak. First, Mr. Todd Rogers.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for allowing me to come speak to you. My name is Todd Rogers. I live at 9245 Shady Grove Road in Mechanicsville, Virginia. Reason I want to talk to you tonight is about not necessarily the specifics of the details of the change in the ordinances, an application that we currently have that's under the current ordinance and the current plan that allows the clustering. We're a contract owner of approximately 230 acres here in the county, owned by the Eldon Gooden Estate. We've been working on the study through the staff, and they've been super helpful, by the way, in trying to help us get through the application process and that sort of stuff. We've finished all of our preliminary engineering, done our site studies, our soil studies, waterline studies, our traffic impact analysis has been completed, our community impact analysis has been completed, and we filed our cluster development subdivision plan on June 7th is when we filed that. It is currently under review by all the agencies. We're getting some comments back, and I shouldn't say we've gotten formal comments back. We're getting some questions back by some of the reviewing agencies and that sort of thing. We anticipate having full review here in the next few weeks. I think the first week of August is the deadline, I guess, for getting the review back. So we are just hopeful, and we request and respectfully request from the board that you would consider grandfathering our particular request under the current cluster subdivision ordinance and consider that to be grandfathered so they can move forward with the purchase and obviously pay the landowners their money for the land. And that's what our request was for here tonight, is for y'all to consider grandfathering our request. So again, we're through the process, at least halfway through the process at this point. So thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Rogers. And that's the only, just for the record, that is the only application that is on file, Mr. Hathaway?
Yes, sir, it is.
Next is Elizabeth Greenfield.
Good evening, Chairman Evelyn, members of the board, Mr. Hathaway. My name is Elizabeth Greenfield. I represent the Home Building Association of Richmond. Address is 400 North Ridge Road, Richmond, Virginia 23229. I'm here to offer some comments on the proposed amendments to the open space and cluster subdivisions. We appreciate the opportunity to express our concern from the residential construction industry, as was cited earlier. We do have concern, as currently before you, that this ordinance as amended could impact the ability to deliver moderately priced housing in New Kent County. However, we understand the board's desire to balance growth and maintain its rural character. So we would ask respectively if you would maybe consider some amendments to the ordinance before you. The proposed 1 lot per 10 acres is a pretty significant shift. It could make some projects economically not feasible. So we would ask if you would consider 1 lot per 3 acres as middle ground. Similar to the open space requirement, moving from 50% to 80%, we would ask if you would consider maintaining at 50%. And also, in previous meetings at the Planning Commission, there was some citing of this ordinance mirroring that of Hanover counties, and they have a minimum parcel size of 20 acres. So we would ask if you would maybe consider something along the lines of Hanover, around 20 to 25 acres. I really appreciate the opportunity to offer these comments. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, no one else has signed up this evening, so I'm going to close the public hearing. I am surprised that there's, not more developers here this evening, and the comments I've received, somebody asked me today, the majority of my comments that I've received are in support of this. But I think probably the biggest question tonight is we do have an application that has been filed. So I guess the first process is if we want to, if there's some support for this, and if it is, we need to consider, I think, the request on the Gooden property.
Mr. Chairman, just curious on, would that require a separate motion or just an amendment to the motion we already have?
Just an amendment.
Just an addition to that?
Yeah, if you can just clarify, and I can read the language. If it's the pleasure of the board how you want to do that, I would just say that you amend the ordinance. Currently, it reads the effective date is this ordinance shall be effective immediately. I would just add that language to say this ordinance shall be effective immediately. However, it shall not apply to any application for a cluster subdivision submitted prior to July 1st, 2022. That would exempt that if that's up to the pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So if we do this amendment, then if we have other ordinances, how are we going to respond to other ordinances as far as grandfathering and applications and permits and all that? How are we going to do that? I don't have a clear understanding.
Well,
if we're going to pass an ordinance, then shouldn't we pass an ordinance, if we're gonna defeat an ordinance, then we defeat an ordinance.
Well, I think if we pass it without the amendment, it's my understanding that according to the county attorney, he's not vested. And I would think, according to their attorney, I would probably think that they consider themselves, they are vested, so it's probably end up in the courts. But anything else that comes up after, if we pass it and everything comes up after tonight or any other application, they would have to follow the new ordinance if it's passed tonight in its current form.
So my question is, if we pass the ordinance, and I think it's for 90-some homes?
92?
The one application that's in right now, I believe it's for 92 homes.
So
92
we're
homes.
just restricted to 92 homes? Because it's 200 and some acres of property, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think they would, whatever the application is, I mean, there could not be any drastic changes. They couldn't go on to 200. I mean, they couldn't. I think by right they could have another 118 homes, if I remember the plat. Is that correct? With something like
They could
that.
have a total of, I believe, 118 or something in that,
Something in
that
that neighborhood, but
ballpark.
they're asking for 92, roughly 1 acre lots.
That's correct.
Is that what's pending on their application currently?
92 lots.
Okay.
I have to tell Mr. Chairman, I don't know about the rest of the board members. I've got a tremendous amount of phone calls about this, and it's in support of this ordinance. It is our residents that sometimes some of them are life residents here. Some of them have just moved here within previous years, but they're in agreement that as a county we have to do something to restrict our growth until, at least until we have a updated comprehensive plan, and so they are absolutely in support of this ordinance. And it's not, I mean, when we come in and we say, okay, so about being grandfathered, I mean, this is the first that we've talked about it. I haven't talked to my constituents about it, but I feel confident they would not be in support of this.
In support of the amendment.
Exactly.
I just think it's important for us to maintain our, I guess you could say, our integrity when it comes to people putting forward an application that they are operating under rules that aren't going to change midstream. So I think that, you know, just from the business environment in New Kent, I think people should understand that if you file an application and you do spend and invest money to make plans and time and all that effort that goes into something like that, that we're not going to pull the rug out from under you midstream. So I think I think we are doing the right thing with this ordinance. I think we're certainly doing what is, you know, most folks in New Kent want to see us do to kind of limit and restrict growth, at least to areas that we can kind of define. But I think that for us to change the rules mid-game for somebody is just not fair and not appropriate. And I think we should honor that grandfather for this particular project.
Mr. Hathaway, what is that property in the comp plan? Is that?
Rural lands.
It's a rural lands?
Yes.
So when was the application filed?
June 5th.
I mean, when did the process start? June 5th?
What process are you referring to? This amendment process?
This application that we're talking about grandfather.
Oh, June 5th. Well, June 5th is when they filed the application. I believe in May they came and talked to us, or it was April, at the Development Review Committee. So I imagine it was probably in works months before that as well.
Mr. Rogers, you want to come up and?
And so we talked about this in January as a board?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you want to give us a? You'd like to give us a timeline on?
Yes, sir. I can give you the exact timeline. We had put the property under contract in February. We started talking about the application process and figuring out the studies immediately. We had to do, like I mentioned, the other studies that had to be done before we filed. We had to go through the Development Review Committee, and we went through that process. That was all done in May, and then we filed in June. But all the studies have been done between March and May. So you have to, you understand, you have to get soil work done, you have to get traffic analysis done, you have to get community impact analysis done. So there's a lot of studies that go into filing an application prior, because then the application is not complete. So the application was complete when we filed it in the first week of June. I don't know if that muddies it up or clears it up.
During that process, at any time, did staff make you aware that this was going on?
Yes, they did. They made us aware that there was an ordinance potential change. They said, everything exactly what you're talking about here. We've seen that. We were, again, the vested rights. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm just thinking that there's things for the family to assume that if they're accepting applications at the county, that we ought to be able to conduct business that way. That was just our assumption, and maybe legally that's wrong. I don't know, but
Does anybody have any questions for?
Yes, Mr. I can see where Mr. Rogers is coming from. You have invested a lot of money to get it to this point and everything, and so I have no problem with having that property grandfather. Going to changing the ordinance, I said this back in January. I know what we're trying to accomplish here, and I get it. I agree with it, but I said back in January that I think going from 1.5 acre lot to 10 acre lot was pretty extreme, and I had proposed a 5 acre minimum. And when you really think about it, I think when a family builds a home and they have 10 acres of land that they have to maintain, that's a lot of property. And especially when it comes time to pay your real estate property taxes and you've got 10 acres, I think that will discourage it. So I supported having a 5 acre minimum lot.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ryder.
Thank you.
All right. Anybody else have any other comments?
Maybe one.
It's the pleasure of the board. No, you can do one if you want to make. Do some.
Because it won't change the outcome of the main motion.
Pleasure of the board. Ms. Lockley.
If it pleases the board, I'm going to make one motion and include the grandfathering. Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt Ordinance O-11-22, a text amendment to Chapter 91, Section 127, and Chapter 98, Article 7 of the New Kent County Code to amend the provisions for open space or cluster subdivisions and the minimum lot size for the agricultural zoning classifications. This ordinance does not apply to pending applications prior to January 1st.
Mr. Lockwood, that's July 1st.
July 1st. I even wrote it down.
But, the two motions he's made two motions
No,
together.
it's just made one motion.
About the grandfather?
This
Yeah.
would allow this particular project to be grandfathered.
Right, but it would also vote to support the 10 acres, right?
Correct.
Yes.
So you can't vote for, I don't want to vote for both of them.
Well, you don't have to vote one way or the other. That's what you get paid to do. You
Well,
gotta make another
I
motion.
think if the motion been made differently, it'd been easier.
You can make a motion, Mr. Steers.
I make a motion that we divide the two.
Mr. Chair, you have a motion on the floor. It's the motion for Mr. Lockwood currently.
He can do an additional motion.
He can ask for rescind or for revise.
Well, he can have a substitute motion, which you could vote on.
You have to vote on that one first.
You would.
Robert rules.
Yes, you would.
Yeah.
Substitute motion.
If there's a substitute motion, yes, you would have to vote on the substitute motion to replace the main motion, yes. If there is a substitute motion.
Right. I haven't heard a substitute motion yet. All right. We have a motion on the floor. Any other discussion?
I have a question. My question is, if we vote on this, and if the 92 homes are approved, then will the developer have to come back if they want other homes, or are they allowed by right to just build other homes?
Just the 92 that's been proposed in their application.
Okay.
All right. Ms. Stanger, poll the members, please.
Ms. Page?
Jesus.
Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
No.
Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. All right. Next item. Application ZM-03-22, Joseph Yates Ordinance O-12-22. Ms. LaDuke.
All right, thank you,
And
sir.
Mr. Yates is here as well.
He is here. This will be brief. Mr. Yates has requested the rezoning of approximately 0.153 acres of land from A1 to R1. The subject property is located at 7200 Pinehurst Drive in Five Lakes and is currently a split-zoned parcel that Mr. Yates recently recorded a boundary line adjustment with Brookwood Golf Club. The purpose of the BLA and the subsequent rezoning request is to allow the applicant to construct an accessory structure on the property, and the R1 zoning will allow this while meeting the required setbacks. The application was reviewed by all reviewing agencies in VDOT, and none of these agencies had any comments or concerns. This rezoning will not contribute negatively to county services. Having the entire parcel zoned R1 will reduce confusion regarding property data, tax assessment, and zoning enforcement. The Planning Commission considered this application at their meeting on June 21st and voted unanimously to forward a favorable recommendation to the board, and Ordinance O-12-22 is before you for your consideration. If you'd like to speak, you can. Otherwise, Mr. Yates is here to answer any questions.
Well, I'll open the public hearing first. Could you just bring the sign-up sheet? No one signed up? All right, I'll close the public hearing. Anybody have any questions or comments? Or Mr. Yates, do you have anything?
Pretty straightforward. Mr. Chairman, I think this is really a no-brainer.
Well, I'll entertain a motion.
I'd like to make the motion that we approve ordinance 0-12-22.
Thank you, Mr. Steers. Stanger, will you poll the members?
Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Ms. Page? Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. Motion passed. Next item, public hearing, AFD-01-22, addition to Lower Chickahominy Agriculture and Forestry Districts. Ms. Adams?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicants Terry and Robbie Lindsay have applied to add their property to the Lower Chickahominy AFD. They intend to preserve some streamside wetland that's located on their property, as well as manage some mature pine on the parcel. And they are working on a forestry management plan, which is enclosed in your packet. This is tax map parcel 43-70. It's approximately 24.46 acres, and they have defined the proposed land use is real estate devoted to open space, particularly wetlands as defined in the Virginia State Code, along with the mature pines that are noted in the forestry report. Staff offered a favorable recommendation based on the reports received and the information from the applicant. The AFD Advisory Committee met on May the 19th and voted 7-0 to forward a favorable recommendation. And the Planning Commission met on June 21st and reviewed the application and voted 8-0-2 to forward a favorable recommendation for your consideration. You can review this under the proposed ordinance 013-22, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. First I'll open the public hearing. No one signed up. I'll close the public hearing. Anybody questions or concerns? None, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Tiller?
I move to adopt ordinance O-13-22, application AFD 01-22, to add the tax map parcel 43-70 to the Lower Chickahominy AFD.
Thank you, Mr. Tiller. Ms. Stanger, will you poll the members, please?
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Ms. Page? Aye. Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. Motion passes. Next, public hearing AFD-03-22, additions to the York River Agriculture and Forestry District. Ms. Adams?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Application AFD 0222 are additions to the Lower Chickahominy District as well. The applicant, however, is Lindsay Arboretum and Game Preserve LLC, which is also the members of the last application we just looked at, the Lindsays. But it is in the name of Lindsay Arboretum and Game Preserve. I believe it's the brothers Robbie and Charles. They currently have some other parcels in the district, but they wish to add tax map 4369 and 4368. Both the parcels are approximately 40 acres in size each, totaling 80 acres together with the two parcels. They currently have 4870 and 4871 nearby in the AFD, and they're converting these parcels over to agricultural grassland, converting it from grasslands over to pine forest. And in the packet, I've provided you some documentation of the invoices that they've provided us, that they've planted shortleaf and white pine on the parcels. We also had the Virginia Cooperative Extension go out and take photos of the property. We've been working with Forest, the new extension agent, pardon me, I don't get his name here. He's been real helpful to Ms. Townsend over at the Virginia Cooperative Extension. He provided us with some photos there. And in the packet, we also have a forestry report from Mr. Faulkner at the State Forestry Department. Staff offered a favorable recommendation based on the forestry conversion from the agricultural pastures, as well as the advisory committee and the planning commission. And you can consider adopting ordinance 14-22, and I'll answer any questions that you have about the information in the packet.
Just for the record, I think I mentioned the wrong. I jumped ahead one. This is AFD 0222. I'll open a public hearing. Anyone signed up? No one signed up. Any questions, comment? Entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lockwood.
I move to adopt ordinance O-14-22, application AFD-02-22, to add tax map parcel 4368 and 4369 to the Lower Chickahominy AFD.
Thank you, Ms. Lockwood. Stanger, we poll the members, please?
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Ms. Page? Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. Before we move forward, does anybody, I don't want Ms. Adams keep repeating herself. Does anybody have any concerns that we really need to get any detail in any of these AFDs? Because I might just get her to give us a little briefer presentation. I do think, I know that I spoke with Ms. Tiller today, maybe getting a little more detail on the Harrison one.
I'd questioned the time frame of that coming into the AFD. I thought there was a time frame that it had to be.
But nobody sees any huge red light, so I'm just going to get her to.
Yep, that's fine. I was good with that.
Okay. So we can just get a.
And I was informed by Ms. LeDuc that there was no minimum time. Thank you.
Okay, next. AFD 03-22, additions to the York River Agriculture and Forestry District. Ms. Adams?
Yes, AFD 0322, we offer ordinance 01522 for the board's consideration, Mr. Chairman. This is an additions to, actually 3 additions to the York River AFD by Mr. Randolph Coleman Jr. It's tax map parcels 47-3-5, 47-3-6, and 47-3-7. He intends to farm this property with Mr. Albert Dean, and you can consider that through ordinance 01522.
I'll open a public hearing. Anybody signed up? Close the public hearing. Any other comments? Entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Lockwood.
I move to adopt ordinance O-15-22, application AFD-03-22, to add tax map parcel 47-3-5, tax map parcel 47-3-6, and tax map parcel 43-7 to the York River AFD. 47-3-7.
Thank you, Ms. Lockwood. Stanger, poll the members, please.
Ms. Page? Aye. Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. Next, AFD-04-22, additions to the Pelham Swamp Agriculture and Forestry District. Ms. Adams?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Kendall Hatley has applied to add tax map parcel 22-30 to the Pelham Swamp AFD district. She intends to devote 61 acres to agricultural and pasture for hayfields and 60 acres of timber to 60 acres of timber to forestry management, with 1 acre of the property being unqualified for the primary dwelling and the horse stables and sheds that are there. That would certainly be considered with the Commissioner Remo on how to evaluate that with the home site. You can consider this under Ordinance 016-22, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have about the information in the packet. Just a quick note, this is the old polo field that was abandoned by the Farms of New Kent, and they relinquished this property back to the original family, Kendall Hatley. There was some erosion and sediment control measures still out on the site at the beginning of the year, but is currently being farmed by Mr. Eric Randolph to restore the soils there. Farms of New Kent has satisfied their restoration of the property to Miss Hatley, and just wanted to let you know that was the old polo field, and it's
Mr. Chairman.
converted back.
I have a motion.
We had a public hearing. No one signed up. I'll close the public hearing. And there is also a deed restriction on this as well, so there can't be anything done when it's taken out there. Ms. Page?
I move to adopt ordinance 0-16-22, application AFD 04-22 to add tax map partial 22-30 to the Perm Swamp AFD.
Thank you, Ms. Page. Stanger, poll the members, please.
Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Ms. Page? Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. AFD-05-22, withdraw from York River Agriculture and Forestry Districts. Ms. Adams?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, board members, this is a withdrawal from the York River AFD by Mr. Lloyd Davis. These are three parcels, 38-17, 38-18, and 38-19, which combined total 57.58 acres. Mr. Lloyd C. Christian's brother passed away, who owned these properties. It was Lawrence Larry Davis, who passed away in February, and the brother inherited these properties. And under our code, they can withdraw these parcels under our current code within a 2-year period of inheriting the properties. So we do have favorable recommendations from all staff, the advisory committee, and the planning commission for you to consider the withdrawal under ordinance 017-22.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. I'll open the public hearing. No one signed up. I'll close the public hearing. Any comments?
One, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Adams, was the applicant advised of possible $18,000 to $20,000 to be collected in taxes?
Yes, just for clarification, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Steers, this under our current county code, I do not believe that the Commissioner of Revenue will charge rollback tax due to the death and the inheritance issue that's stated out in our code. The rollback that you're referring to, I believe, is for Mr. Pearson that's coming up on AFD application number 7.
Okay.
Not on this one.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll entertain a motion.
All right, I'll try to get this one right. Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt ordinance O-17-22, application AFD-05-22 to withdraw tax map parcel 3817, tax map parcel 3818, and tax map parcel 3819 from the York River AFD.
Thank you, Ms. Lockwood. Stanger, will you poll the members?
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Ms. Page? Aye. Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. Next, AFD-06-22, addition to Putney Creek Agriculture and Forestry District. Ms. Adams?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the applicants Kimberly and John McLean wish to add parcel 2-44 to the Putney Creek AFD district. You can consider this under ordinance O-18-22. They intend to designate timber. There's probably a 1 acre wetland pond on the property, about 4 acres of pasture and 1 home site, but they do have enough to meet the minimum qualifications under the forestry, the minimum acreage of 20 acres, and they have about 47 acres here. The AFD Advisory Committee, staff, and the Planning Commission have forwarded favorable recommendation to the board members, and you can consider this under O-18-22 to add tax map 2-44 to the Putney Creek AFD.
I'll open the public hearing. No one signed up. I'll close the public hearing. Anybody comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Tiller?
I move to adopt ordinance O-18-22, application AFD 0622 to add tax map parcel 2-44, GPIN PO 8-40452-1919 to the Putney Creek AFD.
Thank you, Ms. Tiller. Stanger, poll the members, please.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Ms. Page?
Aye.
Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. Final public hearing tonight is AFD-07-22, withdrawal from Black Creek Agriculture and Forestry District. Ms. Adams.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Pearson Jr. has submitted an application to withdraw tax map parcel 10-44 from the Black Creek AFD district. He has stated to staff that he is having to sell a portion of this parcel due to life circumstances. It is tax map parcel number 10-47, approximately 170 acres. It does have one primary dwelling and one shed on the property. It's designated A1 right now with future land use of rural lands. You can consider this withdrawal under Ordinance O-19-22. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I'll open the public hearing. Anyone signed up? Assume no one signed up. I'll close the public hearing. Well, any questions or comments? See the applicant here. Is this what you probably, this one you were asking about, Mr. Steers?
Yes,
I assume
it was.
I assume Mr. Pearson's aware of the rollback taxes.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, staff did discuss rollback with the Commissioner of Revenue, Deputy Real Estate Assessor, and the applicant regarding this withdrawal, and he is fully aware that he would be subject to rollback tax. And at the time we looked at the application, it was a rough estimate between 18 and 20,000, but that is subject to change depending, you know, from the date of the application to today. So
It's kind of up to the Commissioner's office.
yeah.
Right. All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I move to adopt Ordinance O-19-22, application AFD 07-22 to withdraw tax map parcel 1047 from the Black Creek Agricultural and Forestry District.
Thank you, Ms. Lockwood. Stanger, poll the members, please.
Ms. Page? Aye. Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Ms. Adams.
You're welcome, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Vaughn, I told you the AFDs wouldn't last 30 minutes.
Next is the elected officials reports. Mr. Steers,
Oh, I have no reports. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Tiller,
I have none either, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Lockwood.
I have none because I'm still getting caught up from vacation.
I know the feeling. Ms. Page.
Mr. Chair, I do have some. First, I would like to take the opportunity to thank everyone that attends our New Kent Farmers Market. Even on a rainy day, we have over 400 attendants, and we're averaging between 482 to 521 attendants each Saturday. And so grateful for the help of our county administrator, Mr. Hathaway, for Krista Ayusi, and also Minister Joy Taylor that has joined our group and seems to be enjoying herself handing out our custom-made farmers markers bags. And for the Sheriff's Department, your presence is also, we're grateful for it, and thank you. We had a wonderful groundbreaking with AutoZone. Mr. Chair, the only thing that was lacking was you.
Well, I'm sure.
Our EDA director and his staff put together a well-organized event. The governor has used the AutoZone truck as his background in many of his speeches lately, and he committed to coming back for Bugle Call Coffee. So it was a great event there. And also, we'd like to thank all that came out to support on June 25th, New Kent County Relay for Life. Colonial Downs was an awesome host, worked with Charlotte, Lee, and Ken. Ken is the general manager, and quite a celebration for our survivors, and awesome time to encourage family members that had passed from cancer. And just to be very, very clear, our goal this year was $20,000, and we are probably about $3,000 short. So we are still taking donations for New Kent County Relay for Life. Then the NAACP of New Kent sponsored Juneteenth, where we had our sheriff's department was present. It was a day of celebration at New Yellow Baptist Church for all to come and attend. They had a bunch of stuff going on, vendors, singing groups, who knew? And then on Saturday, had the pleasure of witnessing the retirement of Reverend Dr. Milton Hathaway, and his celebration of 41 years of ministry and his service to this great county. And Mr. Chair, we'll welcome you back.
Thank you, Ms. Teller.
I didn't know we got 2
Ms.
weeks,
Page.
but okay.
Are we welcoming back horse racing too?
Yep.
We are welcoming back.
I was going to say that.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Chair. Go ahead, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I was out today at the Colonial Downs. So they had a great turnout. 2 of the owners were there. They're really looking forward to an exciting season. I think they have, every day, they're racing 3 days a week, but it's my understanding that the purchase is going to be about $600,000 a day. So they are going to get some good horses in here, some good jockeys. So everybody was very excited out today. It's a big day for New Kent. Right. And Ms. Lockwood, welcome you back as well. Staff reports, Mr. Hathaway.
I have no report. Thank you.
All right. There's no other business. Appointments delegated by district. Does anybody have any? All right. If none, appointments not delegated by district.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I move to appoint R. Ronald Jordan as a representative to the Farms of New Kent Community Development Authority Board to serve a 4-year term beginning January 1st, 2022 and ending December 31st, 2025.
I think we need another motion on the Planning Commission, Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee. Some roles need to be switched.
Mr. Chairman, do we want to go ahead forward with that? Okay. I move to rescind the appointment of Laura Rose as Planning Commissioner Representative and Mark Bennett as alternate Planning Commission Representative to the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee. I also move to appoint Mark Bennett as a Planning Commission Representative and Laura Rose as an alternate Planning Commission Representative to the Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee.
All right. There are no other appointments. Ms. Stanger will call the roll on the appointments not delegated by district.
Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Ms. Page? Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. Next, appointments of regional boards and commissions. You got one to point that, Ron? That's your district.
You talking about Debbie Ridge? I haven't discussed it with her. I hate to reappoint somebody without discussing it with them, but I guess I can.
Well, Ellen, I think her and Ellen have talked.
Oh, okay.
She's
All right,
good.
thanks.
Uh-huh.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I move to appoint Debbie Richards as New Kent's representative to the Rappahannock Community College Board to serve a 4-year term beginning July 1, 2022, and ending June 30th, 2026.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Steers. Ms. Stanger, will you call the roll on appointments of regional boards and commissions?
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Ms. Page? Aye. Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Evelyn?
Aye. The next regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Supervisors will be held at 6 p.m. on Monday, August 8th, and the next work session at 9 a.m. on Wednesday, July 27th, 2022, both in the boardroom of the County Administration Building. If there's no other business, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Tiller. Ms. Stanger, will you call the roll?
Mr. Tiller?
Aye.
Ms. Page? Aye. Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Evelyn?
Meeting adjourned. Thanks, everyone.